So, a thing that can make sunbeams look very sunbeamish is putting stuff in them. Like, look at this. Can you imagine being this tiny? Like, all these little bugs are just so small. They look like dust, and so there's a bunch of different ways we can do that. There's the way that I usually like, which is really quick. I'll just pre-make, something like this, where I don't even know how well you can see this on YouTube, but it's just lots of little bugs, or maybe this one. It's a little bit more dense and uniform, and some moths, cause in Blender you can go import images as planes, take the footage, and turn the mix shader between the transparent and the emission here into an add shader, and it'll add all the transparency values with the emission values, and you've just got, oh, you do want to turn off shadows here. Shadows none. And then you got your some bugs here. And then if you want to make it kind of volumetric, you can scale them and have multiple levels like this. Then you have kind of your dusty space, and ideally, actually, like, this is all pretty intense. You ideally, I guess, want to shrink it down so you have, keep everything subtle. This is a dust demo, so I'm overdoing the dust a little bit, but also turning down the emission maybe like 0.5. Yeah, but then you have your little dusty room. But what if you don't want to do it with video textures? What if you actually want everything actually volumetric, like this right here, as you're moving through? Everything can definitely be. You can see that they're on video planes like this if you don't line everything up right. So let's set up an actual thing in actual 3D space. So let's open up. Oh, hello. And model our dust. That looks pretty good. Maybe let's turn on screencasting. Boop boop. Control B, bevel it. There, that's a good little dust. And let's create our. Let's see. I'm gonna put this in a new collection. Dusty. That was a typo, but I love it. And create our new domain. I want to make this, because it involves physics, I want to make it to scale. And let's see. So a person is a bit smaller than the default cube, which is about 2 meters tall. So this is about the size of a person. So I'm going to make this about the size of a room. Yeah, cool. And I'm going to give it a material so that no one can see it. And I'm going to call it transparent. Yes, and now if we render it, it should be a black cube. So blend mode, alpha blend, shadow mode, none. And now it is invisible, but we'll still be able to see our little particles. So let's label this wow. Okay, particles, new, dust. We're going to have it render as a collection, and the collection will be dusty. And now we have, look at that. We got our little bouncing dusts. That's good, but also very bad. It looks more like it's raining. A little housekeeping. Let's set up a light here. Oh, turn it to sun. I'm gonna select this cube here, and all right, we want everything to start all on frame 0. Pow! Great. And I'm not doing any other physics, so I'm just gonna go in and uncheck gravity, and so now it'll just kind of be all floating around. Back into physics, I'm gonna turn the source to be volume, and so now it'll just appear, inside the volume instead of from the faces. But it's still getting some velocity from the normals, and I don't know how it knows which normal each one belongs to. But if we change that to 0, it should just be floating stationary in space, waiting for us to give it some physics. And they all die on frame 50 because that is the lifetime. So let's give that 500. Yeah. Okay. Right now this looks bad, but let's make it look better. I'm gonna turn the scale to like 0.005. That's still pretty big dust, but turn on the scale randomness. Scale randomness will always like err on the side of shrinking stuff, and so you make it the biggest you'd ever want the dust, and then maybe crank this up to 1. And now how do we get it to move? We use force fields. Turbulence. There it is. And look at that, it's already kind of doing a thing, looking kind of dusty. Now you just have to dial it in. Sometimes the denoising for small stuff will just make it become very hard to see. And so I might uncheck viewport denoising here, and it kind of makes things a little bit rougher, but it's more representative of what you're actually working with. So the flow, I might turn the flow to 1. And so size is really cool, because size is the size of the turbulence field, basically. So if you, I'm going to turn these particles way up. You can see the different air currents kind of pushing them around, and a lot of times that's a cool effect. Can turn up the strength. Woo! So we get kind of those birds in flight type things, which that's very cool actually. But we probably want to. I still like the idea of there being subtle air currents, you know, in the room, is like the gusts and stuff move. The gusts, the bedroom gusts, you know. So I might turn the strength down to very small and see what this looks like here. That's looking pretty good actually. We still want to shrink it back down to how it was. 0, 1. Even that I think is still too big, but we'll dial that in later. I do want to add a little bit more variety to the dust, because my favorite type of dust is hair. So those little tiny little hairs, like if you have a cat, or I don't even know where these hairs come from. Are they our hairs? They're mystery hairs. And just by duplicating this object, since it's in the collection, it'll just add, you know, we can do this again, but make it like a very, very long hair, and then 1/3 of all these hairs will be these long spaghettis, and that isn't good. So now we can turn these back off, and unfortunately, they are all oriented the exact same way, which we can fix with a rotation. And I think if I just check dynamic, will it automatically start rotating all these guys? Yes, but let's just start with everything random. If there's a random slider, ooh, okay. Definitely still a little too big. 0.001. It's all about just dialing it in. Now to figure out materials though, because we have options, and it all depends on how we want the dust to play with the light. We could just leave it, you know, like this. This is the default, the principled BSDF, which just means it kind of renders as just a solid white object, which, you know, could be good. We could make it an emissive material, and what that'll do is it means all of the dust is just going to glow no matter the situation, which a lot of times is good. It renders really quick, but if we have like a sunbeam coming in a window, the dust doesn't care about where the beam of light is. Every piece of dust is just glowing on its own. But it renders very quickly. Let's see, if I turn down the depth of field here, let's see, let's have it very shallow and just make sure some of this dust is in focus. Yeah, and I'm gonna turn on denoising too. I just think that would help here. Go to cycles. Check denoising data, and then in the compositor here, use nodes, just slip in a denoise node, connect the normal, the albedo. You can see it renders fairly quick, and it denoises okay. If we change the emission to a translucent material here, you can see now only the dust being hit by the sunbeam shows up, which is very cool. Unfortunately, you need a couple more samples to really make it render nice. So there's just a trade-off there. So if you want to add dust to your own scene, you can either do all of that or just go File, Append, Dust Asset, and just import the whole thing here. There we go. We can put the dust somewhere, put it on its own layer, and kind of hide it. Put your thing wherever you want it, and ideally, it should just work right out of the gate. Let's see, we can still tweak everything. I'm going to make the dust a little bit larger here. Oh, and it falls. Turn off gravity. There we go. We have our dust floating in a window, and just tweak it so you like it. Once you have the dust ready to go and you want to render, I would recommend going into the particle settings and going down to cache and just baking all dynamics, and that'll just save the simulation so that you can't accidentally, you know, all the stuff won't jitter around. So yeah, Usually I'm just gonna use the video textures, but it's nice to be able to set stuff up for real if you need to. Hopefully that's useful.